Everyone comes from somewhere, a place, a town here or there. A woman who failed to be a mother, a sister who hates her brother. All haters, all lovers, everyone comes from somewhere.
So my name's Jason Yelvington. I'm married to my wife, Melissa Yelvington, standing off to the side, and I've been a Christian for about 2.5 years now. Home life, family life wasn't the greatest situation. Mom and my dad, two very different people. Dad came with his sets of problems, addictions, so that created a pretty tenseful marriage, and it just became really two separate people living in the same house, stay together for the kids type of situation, I guess. Finding ways to cope with that. My brother turned to his avenue and he had his ways, and for me, that manifested itself into an addiction in pornography at a very early age. Shortly after into college, about second year of college, a girl that I was dating at the time brought me to my the first Christian church I would say that I'd ever attended. They believed the Bible, they trusted the Bible, everything they did was by it, and that I hadn't heard teaching like that before. At the church now, hearing this, God convicted me. It was a really scary feeling. He really just kind of removed the veil from my eyes to see a lot of my own sin, see the way I was treating other people. My reaction was to just run. I saw that I was a bad person. I saw that I was in need of forgiveness, but I thought I could still do that myself. I thought I could still earn that myself. And so fast forward 2 years later, and still the same person I was before. In the Coast Guard, I became a helicopter rescue swimmer. A job, again, that I thought would bring me satisfaction, would kind of just appease the demons that I had inside, would convince me that I was a good person. But I was the same person, different job, still treating people the same way, still very moral in the areas that I could, but still addiction was just as bad as it ever was, if not worse. Still spending a large part of my time and money chasing it. And at that point, I was now in another relationship with a girl who was steadily going down the same path that all the other ones had before. We took a vacation to Hawaii, and while we were there, we went to visit a church that she had gone to previously. She had lived in Hawaii for 2 years, and this church was kind of a second home to her when she lived there. And the first weekend we were there, she wanted to speak because she had future aspirations of becoming a missionary. But the church was very loving, they were welcoming, they were glad to see her, and they saw who I was, and she asked if she could speak and asked for support the next week, and they said they'd get back to her. A couple days later, we got a phone call from them, and it was the lead pastor, and he wanted to tell her that they would not allow her to speak or ask for support because of the situation that she was in, because she was in Hawaii with me. They knew our circumstances, and they did not feel that she was at a place to be put in a position, an elevated position within the church. It was not an example that they wanted others to see or others to follow. This crushed her, but it intrigued me, and I convinced her to go back the next week because I hadn't encountered that type of courage, I guess that type of that form of love before. We go back, and this is next Sunday. Only the second time I had ever seen all of these people, and one of the elderly women after the service that I was there pulled me off to the side. So I'm now standing on the side of this church after a service with a woman who I had only seen once before, the week prior, and she proceeds to scold me. And there was no self-righteousness to it at all. It was very humble, very loving. She was holding my hand the entire time through it, but just very serious, calling out these things in my life that didn't line up with what I was professing, and saying that a man of God does not treat a woman like this, that I'm not protecting her, I'm not in any way honoring her or loving her, and that needed to stop. After we got back to Alaska, shortly thereafter, I ended up ending my relationship with that girl because I had just, again, my eyes had just, world was flipped upside down. I saw that I had no idea what a Christian relationship looked like with a girl, how I was to treat a woman. I had no idea of that. And to add to it, my addiction still was, like I said, as bad as it ever was, and I knew that needed to change. If I was ever going to be able to look at women correctly, look at them as God's children and not just something for me to objectify and to use. At that point, I pretty much locked myself in my apartment for the next 4 months, just reading everything I could, scripture, books, listening to sermons, and just God slowly in that time started freeing me more and more from my addiction and binding me closer and closer to Him. It wasn't about I needed to get rid of this, I needed to change this. It was just I need to see what this is about. I needed to, who is this God that everybody was talking about? Who's Jesus that has affected these people's lives so much? I just wanted to see Him more and more. And as I started to see that and He started to open my eyes to that, just the powers of these other things just started to kind of lose their grip more and more and more. Fast forward to today, we'll say the last 2 years from that point to today were not easy. They were filled with a lot of turmoil and still a lot of internal struggle, doubt, feelings of guilt and shame where I failed, because while God took away, and I had tried to end that addiction, my addiction to pornography, many times before I was a Christian, just because I was embarrassed of it. It was a shameful thing to me, but that I could never do that. It never worked. Nothing ever stuck for any length of time. But one of the things that I'm so thankful for with God was that He really did loose and pull that desire for that. I mean, He gave me a desire to be with Him and for holiness, and to really just hate sin and hate that part that was a part of me at that point. Today, though, I am now married to my beautiful wife, Melissa, and we are about to have our first child. She's been amazing through it all, because this addiction is going to be something I'll have for the rest of my life. It's something I'm always going to have to be mindful of and watchful of, and it's something she's inherited, but she's been able to help me through it so much, just being understanding, being open to talking about it, wanting to understand it, to know how she can help me with it, and that's been absolutely essential. If I keep it to myself, it will be an issue of shame, and then Satan will still have power over me with it, but more I can get these things out in the open, and there's no secrets with it, then, I mean, I'm no longer defined by that. That's not that hidden part of me that I don't want people to see. I'm defined, I'm bought by Christ. That's where my identity comes from. All these things, we all have a past, but I'll just leave it there and keep my eyes on Him in the future, and with His grace and His love and a lot of help from my wife too, and we'll be through this in the end.